Yeah, Talaman, Geek Talk. Let's enjoy the show. Talaman always got a plan. Geek Talk is popping where it's really at. Represents geek culture, homie got structure. Sometimes it's vulgar, screw catch culture. Feel like Luffy, smart to say the least. Loving One Piece, man, really loves to eat. Everybody knows the show is really is Talaman. You know what time it is. Let's go, Geek Talk.
Hello and welcome. We got another episode of Geek Talk with Tyler, and as always, I'm your host Tyler. Today I'll be joined by my co-host Arisa. How you doing today?
I'm doing all right, Tyler. How are you?
Doing pretty good. Arisa will also be joining us as the voice of Storm, and quite possibly the voice of several other X-Men characters in our upcoming series, The Undateable X-Men. Anything else you're working on right now?
Not currently. I soon will be, though. Getting back into theater. So hopefully we'll be going back on stage here. But for now, I am down because I keep getting strep. So
Ooh, look at you. You're
hopefully
so fancy,
after.
you don't even pronounce it theater. You pronounce it theater.
Yes.
Yes.
Mm-hmm.
Yes. Now that's how you can tell how fancy you are.
Yeah. Well, fancy.
That's a sign that you've made it. It's theater.
Theater. The theatrics. But I will have to wait until my tonsillectomy in February, and then after that we'll be good to go. There are times where I'm at the Pirate Fest out in Harriman, Tennessee. I am the character Calypso. And at times I do the Renaissance Fair when time allows it, because it coincides with the haunted house that I work at as well. So unfortunately, I have to make
to a Renaissance Fair. The one in Tuxedo?
no, the one in Harriman, Tennessee. I have not heard of the Tuxedo one. Is that the one further? Is that the one in Nashville?
It's the one in New York.
New York. Okay, then no, I'm not that fancy. I'm not that fancy at all.
At the risk of sounding placist, if you go to one Renaissance Fair, you've been to them all. Blacksmith, turkey legs, jousting, etc., etc.
I'm gonna keep mum on that because then the pitchforks will come out. I mean, everybody has their allegiance, so and there's nothing wrong with it.
Serve mutton and some don't. Whatever. I'm just saying.
Yep. Well, some have their chess moves, and that's cool, and then some have reenacted beheadings. It's fine. It's fine.
Though I will say, last year I was part of the Dress Like a Pirate Day thing that they had going on. Gotta tell you, they had a lot of One Piece cosplayers.
Yeah, when you find your place, and it calls out to you, you got to go with it. And what's better than One Piece,
Yeah, but the problem was, it was like there were like 15 people there, myself included, and 10 of them were Zoros and Luffy's.
Oh, so they were the classics. Yeah. Nobody decided to go out of the box.
I mean, I saw like a Mihawk. I was Queen from the Beast Pirates. I saw Buggy. I saw Yamato, and I believe a Garp. But for the most part, no, Zoros and Luffy's.
Okay, so Chopper just gets nothing. Okay.
No, I mean, I saw a Luffy with the Chopper doll, but no.
It's not the same. That's a cop-out.
I mean, that's kind of like the same as like saying, sorry, we don't have Coke. Pepsi, okay?
Diet Pepsi.
Also, yeah.
Diet. That's what really stings, is the diet part.
Because
only psychopaths drink diet. Right. That's why I was about to say only psychopaths love diet.
I mean, at this point, you might as well just drink water.
Now, I mean, the human body is made up of 70% of that. So
does that make
kind of need it.
Cannibalistic?
If you drink water to get water, no, because then that would be kind of the same thing as like when you bite skin off of your like thumb and then you swallow it accidentally instead of spitting it out. Is that self-harm? Is that also being a cannibal or?
I mean, I would say about as narcissistic as when Loki screwed himself in the Loki series.
That's self-love. Now we're getting into some gray areas. I consider that some self-love.
Literally.
Right? I mean, who better to love you than yourself? Loki just let us know how it goes. I mean, it's not any worse than your dad having you, screwed by. Anyway, we're going to.
Hey, at least they don't actually dive into the actual mythology of both Norse and freaking Greek mythology. I mean, comparative wise, it is pretty tame. Hell, half of Zeus's kids come fully formed from his head.
That is true. And I mean, since we're just, going to go there, I mean, Odin had Loki screwed in order to get, his steed that he rides into battle. So, I mean, hey,
Yes. But not to get too
the
far
best
from the
Father's Day
subject.
gift ever, I guess.
But not to get too far from the subject, I think our topic today is, do reviews actually matter? A good way to end up our TV themed month, we'll be discussing movies, TVs, and pretty much anything related into media on if they actually have an impact on the programs we watch. Now, Arisa, what are some of your favorite movies or shows?
So I'm more of a good classic horror type of chick. So more of your, earlier Freddy Krueger's, a lot of your earlier Jason's, the first bit of Michael Myers. A little bit of a gray is Jeepers Creepers because of, sore subject of the director. I liked, you know, what the actors did, not so much the director, what he did. So that's a hit or miss on that.
Well, I think it's all about separating the art from the artist.
Correct,
Personally.
correct. But with when it comes to movies like that,
Well, I mean,
sometimes
let's
that's
think
really
about it. Not a lot of people like Michael Jackson. Like, I mean, for God's sakes, Disney took the Michael Jackson episode off from Disney Plus. But every year, Halloween, how many people are playing the song Thriller?
that is true. I mean, that becomes a soundtrack for a lot of episodes, a lot of your clips, cameos, all of that. And you still have where uh people will say, "Oh, I don't like the person, but I really like their music."
Right,
And you have to really figure out which side of that fence you're going to go on, because then people will say, "Oh, but you still support them."
right. Or J.K.
Well,
Rowling, famously, who wrote an anti-trans tweet.
mhm. And that's really close to heart because I grew up with Harry Potter. I am a strong millennial, and so Harry Potter came out when I turned 6 years old, 3 months after I turned 6 years old, and so I legitimately grew up with that. And you have people where you know that starts delegating into or reaching down into how far can you remove the creator from all of these other spin-off creations, because a lot of people were trying to boycott Hogwarts Mystery. A lot of people were trying to boycott Hogwarts Legacy, and you had a lot of fights going on because people were like, I
I
grew up with
honestly
this.
doubt that they will. I mean, let's face it. Without a doubt, Lord of the Rings is the most staple of fantasies, in which all
Hmm.
fantasy series stem from. Whether it's Harry Potter, whether you're watching Game of Thrones, Narnia, which, to be fair, Tolkien and C.S. Lewis were drinking buddies, but I like to think that he
Hmm.
got a little bit inspired by Tolkien.
I think there's inspiration that comes from every creator into their creations that is influenced by another creator. Um, the author for the Redwall Chronicles was influenced, I believe, by the creator of the um why do I want to say Golden Compass? It's not Golden Compass. It's some, I can't remember the book series. It's something The Wheel of Time or something like that. Um
Believe I know what you're talking about.
that and so and when you read both of their works, you see a little bit of influence somewhere in there. And that's why it gets hard to try to, divide from creator to creation. I think it's just one of those things where you just got to kind of stand strong on, look, I like this. This is what I grew up on. I don't agree with what they say, but for me it's the nostalgia.
I mean, the way I see it, you're never going to 100% agree with what anybody says or does.
Absolutely not. You can find similarities, and I think we have gone away from just being able to agree to disagree. It has to be, somebody has to take a win. It's like Uno. Somebody's getting fully destroyed, and somebody has to dance upon the crown of victory. And it's like, no, you can just be a civil person and just agree to disagree. You don't like this, I don't like this. You like this, I like this, and then celebrate from there.
Interesting
We
analogy. I think
we
that's the way we can roll with it.
I think we definitely have, because even, and this is a one of those with our topic, the Harvey Weinstein. You have a lot of movies that were directed by the Weinstein brothers. You have where they are attached to these movies, and you can either see it as being tainted, or it's just an unnecessary attached evil for something that you enjoy.
I even think we should take into consideration something even banned, not just what you call it, something even banned affecting its review. For example, how familiar are you with South Park?
Oh, late nights, early Adult Swim, late nights. Yes,
Okay, so
yes.
there are 5 South Park episodes that have been banned. One of which you will be able to see on Max, which is, and yes, this is the actual title, An Elephant Makes Love to a Pig. But the other 5 episodes you won't find on Max because of the Muhammad controversy. These 5 episodes are the Super Best Friends, the Cartoon Wars Part 1 and 2, and episodes 200 and 201.
See, that's when you start, in my opinion, criminalizing satire. And that's basically what satire is supposed to be. That's the realm of it, is making fun of these really hard subjects.
Well, what about
Or,
self satire?
I'm sorry, what about what?
Self satire.
Self poking fun at yourself is great. If you can't, poke fun at yourself, then you're gonna have, I believe and this is just my personal opinion, I believe you're gonna have a hard time in life.
Well, God, I feel
And
that
maybe
way
this is just because of
because,
how I grew up in the 90s, but you're gonna have a hard time in life if you can't laugh at yourself.
well, glad you feel that way because this was actually the topic of one of the more recent South Park episodes. Um, you may or may not know this, but the Marshes started their own weed business, but they're worried that they, quote unquote, don't have a lot of black friends because it's not good for their business. So they invite the blacks over just to boost up their social media account. I know, I know. And then eventually they address the elephant in the room. And Randy's like, so why exactly did you name him that? Like, what do you mean? Well, isn't it a little odd that you named No what? Well, so why'd you name your son that? I wanted to name him after my favorite author. Wait, what? Yeah, my wife wouldn't allow me to name him J.R.R., so we just decided to name him Tolkien. Oh, his name is Tolkien. And the way they addressed it, it made it seem like Stan and Randy, plus the audience, were the only ones who were unaware of this. But everybody else knew the whole time. Even Cartman, who spelled Tolkien's Life Matter, shared wrong.
See, now I haven't watched that episode, and to be fair, I'm not a big South Park watcher. I watch them every now and then, but I do appreciate the fact that they push buttons so obviously, because that's true. You have, like, I like to watch a lot of these Karen video compilations, and a lot of people
As
say,
much as I hate that term, yeah, they are kind of fun.
they are. It's funny. It's hilarious to me. I cry laughing because the gymnastics that they'll go for to get to be justified in how they're acting or what they're saying. It's like it's that theme of, just because nobody's told you what you're saying is wrong does not mean you're not wrong. Or, in the wise words of our great philosopher Mike Tyson, people don't get punched in the face enough.
Yeah, except he said it with more of a lisp.
People don't get. Yeah, I'm not even going to try because I don't want him
People
to
don't get
come
tried
to me and
putting
be
in
not
their
there.
faith enough. Something like that.
There you go. There you go. That was beautiful. That was beautiful. I feel
I'd
like
like
he
to
was in the
thank
room
Steve
with me.
Bloom for that, whose online classes I'm taking. If you're currently interested in learning more, check online for our Bloomvox Studios.
Steve, Bloom is the way to go. Bloom
Indeed,
is the way to
which we're
go.
going to actually tie back to the actual topic of the matter.
Mm-hmm.
I'm going to ask you something. You're an
Yep.
actor, and I'm going to use that term because we live in a gender
Actor, actress,
I'm not sure which one you're more comfortable with, so
actor. It feels better for my pride.
yeah, you know what? You know what's funny? We have teacher, but we don't have teacheress. We have professor, but we don't have professoress. We have doctor, we don't have doctress.
Mm-hmm. We have lawyers, but not lawyeress.
Right, but we have actor and actress, Mr. and Mrs.
Yeah.
Those are like the only two. Why do you think that is?
Well, I think it's. Yeah, I really don't know, because I think of it as similar to the animal kingdom. You have lions and lionesses. You have tigers and tigresses. You don't have jaguaresses. You just have jaguars. You have monkeys, but not monkeysses. You just have monkeys.
Fair enough.
It's just, at the risk of sounding like current time people,
Politically correct, you mean?
I'm sorry.
Politically correct, you mean?
Yeah, that. Ugh. I think of it as just one of those things where somebody just had to have their way, and then people were like, we'll just go with it.
Give an inch, you take a mile.
Yeah, basically. Because why are those the only exceptions? Because those are. I consider those exceptions. Why are those the exceptions? Why haven't we gone to revamp everything else?
I think it's too much of a headache, but let me ask you something as an actor, though, now that we've established the elephant or elephantess in the room.
Yeah.
Any film or television show, short, etc., anything that gets above an 8 score, do you believe is worth watching? Because I think we should follow school rules for that. Like anything above 8 is done really well.
I I don't believe in that. So I come from the era where Rotten Tomatoes was the up and up, and so anything that you wanted to watch, you immediately went to Rotten Tomatoes. Immediately. That was your determiner or determining factor for whether a movie was going to be great and whether it was worth your time watching. And I don't believe that. Well, now I don't quite believe that. Earlier on, yes, I followed the wave, but now I don't, because at the risk of being cliche, art is about your interpretation. In movies are an art, plays are an art, episodes are an art. You have these writers, this is their art, this is their creation, and it really goes based off of how you're going to absorb it. People didn't think The Fly. If I remember correctly, when The Fly first came out, Rotten Tomatoes scored it a 6, I believe. But that turned out to be one of, what's his name, Goldblum? Jeff Goldblum.
Most classic films. Yes.
That's what, like, people rave about that. And you'll see where there's always a turn for nostalgia that's going to influence. I think
Here's the real question. Does nostalgia automatically mean that something's better? Like if something came out today, like The Fly came out today, would it still be good?
I think so. I think it would. I think, and this is just me being biased, absolutely being biased, and I'm not gonna try to scurry from that. This is absolutely me being biased, because take for example the new generation of Jurassic Park versus
Well, it'll be Jurassic
the generation
World, but okay.
of Jurassic World versus Jurassic Park. The beginning. And it's kind of the same plot. So people already knew what was going to happen going in because it's something that worked. It worked for Jurassic Park. Why wouldn't it work for Jurassic World? And even though, and I'm not entirely certain of the statistics, from my understanding, and correct me if I'm wrong, because I believe you have access to a computer and I do not, at this time at least. I believe that if you
Well, I can tell you that Jurassic World, the one with Chris Pratt in it, was one of the highest grossest films for quite some time. But review-wise, it really hasn't done so well. But to be fair, dinosaurs are like easily one of the 4 coolest things ever. I would say that, along with rebellious anti-heroes, robots, and things that can transform. Instantly, that's why the Dinobots are the coolest thing ever. But that's a topic for another day.
And that would be an interesting topic to go, because you do have those, and they're not even niches anymore. Before, they were absolutely niches. You know, not a whole lot of people were into that, except for a small group. And now it's reversed. Now people are way into it.
Are they into it because, well, because we have the technology for it? Like, let's look at the 90s for a second. The technology really wasn't as there.
I don't think necessarily the technology. I think.
Well, I mean, let's look at the MCU for a second, shall we?
Okay.
Do you really think they could do characters like Thanos or the Hulk or pretty much even Guardians of the Galaxy to the same degree with the 90s technology that we had?
No, I don't believe so. But if you look at some movies, if you look at some movies that have actually the CGI for them have held up. Let me see.
I mean,
Like
Toy
the
Story could
puppetry.
be debatable on that.
Well, animation wise, I think they, you know, the 90s really hit it and then it revved up in the mid 2000s. But a lot of these movies that you're speaking of are also starting to go back to the basics of um, practical techniques, prosthetics. In the movie, uh, goodness, even in The Fly, the prosthetics for that were amazing. And for their time, it still held up very, very well. Even if you go back to watch it again, it still holds up very well for the time that it was made in. Um, I am so sorry. Um, Movies like um um goodness, I am so sorry, Tyler. Um, my babies are just going crazy right now.
No problem. You're not the first guest
Splinter.
that I've had unexpected guests.
Right? They're like, Mom, we got something to say. We watch movies with you too. Um, the Leprechaun, the practical techniques with that movie, actually that series. Because what the Leprechaun had like 6 movies in it.
That
The
sounds about right. I'm not entirely sure on that, but I mean,
the techniques, especially a lot of the killing scenes, the techniques for that are still things that are used in practicality today. I think, and this is just a personal thing, I think a movie that relies too heavily on CGI isn't doing justice
which
to
is why
itself.
I've preferred the Lord of the Rings to the
Yeah.
Hobbit trilogy.
Oh, absolutely.
The orcs were
Absolutely.
actually more of a makeup and costume piece, whereas you see characters like, say, Gollum or the Eagles or even the Ents for that matter. They knew when to use CGI.
Absolutely. And that still holds up so well for a movie that came out almost, what, 25, 30 years ago? 30.
No, 20 years
Yeah,
ago actually,
that 20 years ago.
but I think we really did hit the peak of CGI in the early 2000s with your Pirates of the Caribbean, your Lord of the Rings, that
Splinter.
era. But now we've got, the problem is we're so used to relying on it. Whether if you just look at the latest Disney remake abortion to the MCU garbage to even the Star Wars stuff that looks terrible because we rely on CGI too much.
Absolutely. I am so sorry. Good. Shiva. Shiva. No, ma'am. Loki. No, ma'am. Speaking of Loki, I think, well, also, I mean, you have movies like Dawn of the Dead,
Okay.
Night of the Living Dead. Those had, because it was the all you had was makeup, and prosthetics, and and just you had to be on your timing for your actors in terms of like the killing scenes or the fights, those choreographed fights. And that's what made those series like The Walking Dead. That's what made those so successful in my eyes, is because those were things that could actually happen. Those are options that I think people would actually do in terms of trying to fight off something.
Well, I think that's an excellent point to bring up. While shows and movies that initially themselves may not be well received do lead to inspiration to sequel counterparts. Like, for example, the Tim Burton movies, the ones with Michael Keaton, may not be well received when you compare them to the other ones. They did lead to the inspiration that is the DCAU, not to mention the overall hype that now is the DC franchise. I almost called it DC Comics, which would have been redundant.
That's all right. You're among safe people.
Yes. Wouldn't be worth my weight in salt of a geek if I actually called it DC Comics. It's like saying, hey,
Right.
can I get a cheeseburger with cheese?
I mean, some people, they like their cheeseburger with, not American cheese. They
No,
like
they
it
don't
with,
specify. They just
pepper jack.
say with cheese.
They
They don't specify.
like it with pepper jack.
Or like one being one of those people that like their own
cheddar.
posts on Facebook.
Oh gosh. I
I'm
know
not
what I
mentioning
got.
names,
I'm
but
sure you know what you
anyway.
got. And you're trying to sell it. I know what you got. You know what you got. That's why you're trying to sell it. Why are you being
Anyway, point is, those movies today may not be well received because how visually dark they are. But what it led to did definitely bring some hype for the DC community. Or even by Transformers lore. Beast Wars was the very first series after the Generation 1 continuity, not only in general, but to apply 3D animation. But because of their 3D animation, instead of the overabundance of characters that we were used to in Generation 1, we only got a handful of characters, but instead of that, we did get character development instead of, what was it, like 18 different characters, 20 some odd different characters per episode?
something like that? You bring up a really good point though, as well, is character development. A lot of the Evil Dead movies that have been coming out, we've seen Ash versus Evil Dead. We know what those are, but it's the interest of the development going in. Like, what are these different choices that are getting ready to happen? And I think the interest is, are we going to see these characters? Especially for people that are tied into um, certain characters.
It's a fair point, but if I may put a pin on that for a second, what
Mhm.
Beast Wars actually did was that every series and pretty much every movie there onward, we only got a handful of characters. Whether it's Transformers Animated, Armada, Prime, or even the movies, we got a small handful of characters instead of the overabundance that we see. That's just one.
Yeah, and I think, well, speaking of that, I think that's also kind of why 90s anime got so big too, is because you had a very small crew. You had very small amount of characters, but a lot of character development. Uh, you have Speed Racer. Speed Racer, you had a very small amount of um
Well, for
of
Split
primary
Engineers, that's
characters.
technically a 60s anime. That's like
What is it?
technically it's a 60s. That's like the Godfather, one of the Godfathers of anime. You know, back when anime was so foreign to us.
Absolutely. Absolutely. Now I'm speaking of, like 90s animes that, people millennials would, would know at least,
If we're
Um
going for 90s anime that they would know, definitely Dragon Ball, which technically counts as an 80s anime.
well, I was about to go, yeah, that's an 80s. Almost, well, I think the first one came out in 78.
The first one
So
came
that would
out in the 80s, but like early 80s.
yeah, okay. I thought it was like
But if
78
we're
or
going actual
70.
90s, Yu Yu Hakusho definitely.
Yeah, Yu Yu
One Piece,
Hakusho.
which has
Absolutely.
had unfortunate American debuts.
Um well, yeah, Code Lyoko. Code Lyoko was also one, which
I think that's
that was
more of
on
a French thing than a Japanese thing.
the Code Lyoko? No, I
Yeah,
think the studio was in Japan for that, if I'm not mistaken.
I'm not entirely sure. I do know that Transformers Generation 1 is definitely an anime because the animation studio that animated it was
Hmm.
Toei, the same studio
Yeah.
that animated Dragon Ball, One Piece, and Digimon.
Hmm. Good old Digimon. Now that was a you want to talk about character development. Digimon definitely does it. I do believe that they did they not do Yu-Gi-Oh as well?
No, I think that was a different company as I think that was a different company as well. But Toei's big three accomplishments were One Piece, Digimon, and Dragon Ball.
Which every single one of those has such a large following through generations. I mean, you have people their their 40s and 50s that is something that they can still connect with technically younger generations.
But as reviews go, the most highly acclaimed anime is Full Metal Alchemist Brotherhood.
Is it?
Oh, according to IMDb, yes.
Huh.
I mean, personally, I think One Piece deserves a higher spot than the 8.5 rating it has, but well, for a series that's got over 1,000 episodes, 8.5 is pretty good.
Oh, it's got over 1,000. Oh, wow.
And funny enough,
Okay.
only 10% of them are actually filler.
That's very different than Naruto. I will say that.
Yeah,
I will say
all those
that.
Narutards that say One Piece has too many episodes. Yeah, your series has 40% filler in the original series, 44%
Yeah.
in the next series, and 16.5 in your god awful Sun series. So have fun with that knowledge.
Yeah. That's yeah. Which comes up to, in terms of reviews of animes, sometimes I think personally the ones that are very short episode like Death Note, um I think they go on how many episodes there are as well, and I don't think that that's a correct way to go because what Death Note, let me see, I should have jotted this down.
Well, I mean, there's so many things to take into account when viewing foreign content. Like, not many people know this that Beast Wars was technically a foreign series because it originally aired in Canada.
Uh-huh. Which, people could say, oh, well, that's still a part of the Americas. No, it's not.
No, it's
It's a,
part
it's a
of North America, but not a part
yeah,
of America.
yeah. And you'll have people that will try to, that'll try to be like, oh, well, that was here in the northern hemisphere or whatever. And it's like, that's still a different if you have to cross a border in order to get to it, it's completely different.
Yeah.
Completely different. It may not be foreign for some, but it's foreign to others.
I mean,
That's
any
just my
country
take
that
on
puts gravy and, what was it, gravy and cheese on fries, that's kind of foreign.
it. What is that called?
Poutine.
I mean, hey, I can't say anything. I come from a black Hispanic family. We put all kinds of things together. I have no heel to stand on with that. Mm-mm.
Fair enough.
I'm not getting on that one. Oh no, 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 no. Though, that the homage to that was made in, what was it, Tusk? With what's the guy's name? Something Long. Anyway, that was also a very good a good movie that made that did not have super raving reviews, but is now a classic.
Well, I mean, back to what we were saying about foreign content, like, there are a lot of things that what you call it, many viewers may not be familiar with when judging something. Like, anybody viewing a Ghibli movie may not be familiar with the content.
No. Well, not well. I think
Or at least the
now with as
mythology.
much, I think now with as much access as we have with the internet, people could very easily catch up with that. But I think if we're going back into the 90s slash early 2000s when, you had to, not everybody had access to it like people do today, like we have today. I think it would be very hard because a lot of it was introduction by, another source, or if you happen to stumble upon it.
Okay, so riddle me this then. How familiar are you with the Ghibli movies, though?
I mean, I'm not going to call myself the most hardcore fan, but when the movie theaters say that they're getting ready to do a Ghibli fest, I'm there.
Okay, so have you heard
I'm
of
there.
Poco?
Yes.
Okay, so in the original version, the raccoons play with their what you call it, scrotal sack, and that's the unedited version. But when Disney bought the dubbed license to it, of course they're going to change it to pouches. So, do you believe that censorship could obviously affect your review?
Mm,
Granted, that one's for
that's
a more for a kid-based reason, but
well, I oh, I think you'll definitely get people talking. I certainly Sailor Moon, Sailor Neptune, and Sailor Uranus in the Japanese version are lesbian lovers.
Sanji smokes a lollipop.
But but over here they made it that they were best friends,
Rice
basically
balls
sisters.
were rice balls were jelly donuts, and apparently in an altered episode of Pokemon, James had inflatable boobs.
Wait, what? Where did I miss this episode?
It was
What?
aired, but they edited that scene out.
What? Get
It was
out.
one of
Oh
the
my god.
three. It was one of the three episodes banned in the states, along with the Porygon episode and the episode where Ash catches all those Tauros.
Get out of here. I didn't even know that. Oh, now
At
I
least
have
for
to
the
find this
original
episode.
Generation 1. There were some other banned episodes from the
Oh,
entire
I have to
Pokemon
find
franchise.
this now. I did not know that. No. What?
You would
because
be
be,
surprised.
oh my gosh, I have to find that because that comes into another point of how, because of course you have, and you see it everywhere. It's like, oh, they're influencing our children to be transgender. Oh, they're influencing our children to be gay. And it's like, just take it as it is. Nobody's trying to influence your kids to be anything. Like when Jesse and James cross dress.
What's
It's
funny? When women
and
wear pants, that's normal. But when guys wear a dress, that's automatically cross dressing.
right, or a kilt. Well, what's the difference between,
Well, that
it's
was
like
more
it's so
cultural. Like, I don't want
that
to
that
get too into
is.
it, but I work with a
But
guy. He's got long braided hair. He's Native
mhm,
American. That's a cultural thing.
correct. Absolutely. And that's and speaking of, women, doing pants, I mean that broke a stereotype in and of itself back
I
then.
mean, Star
I
Trek,
did a
or if we're
play,
going to
did a
go,
play about that.
hell, if we're going to talk about groundbreaking, Star Trek, first interracial kiss.
Yeah. Oh yeah, it did, didn't it?
It did back in Generation 1, back when that actually meant something.
There are a lot of, and I guarantee you could, even from the most mundane, aka see Twilight. I don't
Twilight, as in
I
those
don't
gay little
I don't apologize for
vampires.
that. I don't apologize for that. I don't apologize for that shot at all.
I shouldn't have
But
said gay
I'm
little vampires. That's
twinkly,
derogatory. What I meant to say is
twinkly,
those flashy
twinkly,
vampires. That's a little more
twinkly.
appropriate.
Twinkle Twinkle Little Vamps.
Yeah, let's go with that one.
Yeah, we're totally gonna go with that one. Where there are so many, because okay,
The books themselves are
watching a
popular.
movie here in America, and this is a very extreme, is going to be very different than watching a movie in China.
Well, I think, well,
Right.
hold on. You mentioned Twilight, and I think this is something we need to take into consideration. Like, no matter what the adaptation is, whether it's a manga, a graphic novel, a play, whatever it
Mhm.
is, I think that's something that automatically that affects the adaptation. Like, for example, our X-Men series, just a heads up, for those of you that don't already know this, the title is called The Undateable X-Men. So if you're expecting something hardcore and serious like every other X-Men series, you're going to be a little disappointed.
Yeah. But that is, I think, to a degree, you have to expect there to be some, you have to expect there to be some additions, adaptations that have to happen in order for a director's vision for a movie or what may have you, whatever format that they're making this in, for it to be realized the way that they want it to be realized.
Case in point, I actually did learn this in my voice acting class. Um, what you call it? Frank Welker, who many people will recognize as the voice of Megatron, did eventually repraise his role as Megatron in Transformers Prime.
Mm-hmm.
But even if you've already repraised your role, you still have to follow what the director says because their
Mm-hmm.
vision could be different.
Correct. Sailor Moon versus the new Sailor Moon Crystal, very, very different. Even episode, even if you take it episode by episode, there are already differences that have happened episode by episode comparatively. They may be minute and they may be big, but your fans are going to notice any type of change whatsoever. Like we talked about Rowling, the Harry Potter series. There are numerous, numerous scenes that I personally wished had have been placed in. And that in my brain, I'm like, I don't understand why you couldn't have placed that in there. I don't understand why. That would have made that scene better. Like in Harry Potter in the Goblet of Fire, when Harry's supposed to fight a couple of the blast-ended scoots.
There are a
He
lot of
doesn't.
what ifs that we believe would make the overall series better.
And that's the point that I was getting ready to get to, was that at the end of the day, your fans of a series, book versus television, whatever have you, kind of what you said earlier, you're not always going to be 100% with people. There are going to be some issues at some point for whoever. You kind of have to, I think, expect some disappointment.
I think
You're
also,
going to have to.
when taking into consideration, we need to take into consideration the previous incarnations. Like, let's face it, there have been countless Batman and Joker dynamics.
Absolutely.
I mean, the best ever to exist is the Conroy Hamill dynamic,
Mm-hmm.
but there will always be countless others. Like, if I were going to rate my 3 favorite Jokers from worst to best, I would say it would go Spiner, then it would go DiMaggio, and then Hamill. In case you're wondering, Spiner from Young Justice and John DiMaggio from Under the Red Hood.
And that brings up a point of that, I'm sure that people listening to this would immediately go, well, of course Hamill would be the best. It's Hamill. It's Mark Hamill.
Well, here's a little trivia for you. Did you know that Tim Curry was a candidate for the Joker for not one, but two different incarnations of the Joker?
Yes, I did. Yes, I did. Because it's Tim Curry. And everybody loves Tim Curry. But
I honestly could have seen him as more of a Riddler than a Joker.
now, see, I couldn't because Jim Carrey is Riddler in my head. There are certain parts I think, people will say a name sells. And I think, just being honest, in some cases, that's very true.
Well, yeah.
For a name attached to a movie is definitely going to either go against the reviews or absolutely give vindication to the reviews.
Or at least help bring in a bigger crowd. Like, I think that's why Disney is always trying to bring in bigger crowds. Like, back in the day, they did that, and they did it well. In the 80s, they had Oliver and Company with Billy Joel. They had The Great Mouse Detective with Vincent Price. And they had The Fox and the Hound with the guy that... Who is Charlie's dad in Willy Wonka and the Chocolate Factory?
Oh. I cannot remember his name.
Yeah, because I'm spacing on his name, but
I cannot remember his name.
Because now, but regardless of what his name is, he was the voice for Amos Slade in The Fox and the Hound.
Mm-hmm.
That was also his last thing he did, voice acting or otherwise, before he passed.
Well, I mean, also, the guy that was the neighbor in Pet Sematary. He's passed for so long, and I still remember his voice. He has the most distinct voice, but he did the Munsters.
It's funny. South Park actually kind of made a parody of that character for a while.
I can believe it. I can believe it. I can believe that. Now I have to find these episodes.
Cemetery episode, and once with the Amazon episode, where it was believed that the Amazon delivery men were screwing everybody's wives, and then they were all dressing up as Bane just to teach him a lesson.
The good old the milkman was or could be your daddy.
Yeah. It doesn't matter who we are. What matters is our plans. You should have respected my authority.
Oh, bless it.
Yeah, I mean, don't get me wrong. I wasn't entirely a fan of that incarnation of Bane, but the way that episode was executed was actually pretty good.
Well, when you and speaking of those, reincarnations or incarnations or what, I think people's perception of a actor or actress,
Dorito Dorado,
potato, Danny DeVito Dorito.
Speaking of which, typecasted as Penguin.
Yes.
Although I guess if it was made today, I guess they probably would have gotten Peter Dinklage.
All right, now we're going into it. Now we're going into the ocean. Because people automatically want to say, I think if I'm not mistaken, I read a interview that Peter did, and apparently
is this the
Oompa Loompas? No, like this was during apparently they'd wanted to tap him. He had made some type of comment about the Oompa Loompas, and that he had wanted to go against it, even though it would have been really easy money. He had wanted to go against it because during that time, Austin Powers, Wee Man, all that, like that's all people saw Little People for. And he wanted to go against that. And I sometimes wonder what would have happened. When you're reading these celebrity interviews, you have to wonder like what would have happened to your career had you taken that role. Like, would you be a household name faster? Would you have been a household name at all? And I think that has to do with reviews as well. Because
does being a household name necessarily mean it's a good thing?
I think there's definitely a sway that it has for sure. Absolutely. And I think,
I mean, Adam Sandler makes, he makes occasionally funny movies, but it feels like half the time he makes a movie, it's just so he can hang out with his friends.
Well, did you ever watch the movie Click?
Yeah, I did see that a while back. Have I seen it recently? No.
I think, because to me, when I think of Adam Sandler, that's the very first movie that I believe I saw of his where it wasn't all funny. It wasn't. And that may not be everybody's first go-to movie when thinking of a non-funny Adam Sandler movie, but that is for me.
In general. Like Robin Williams, one of the most well-known improv comedians of all time, has had his less than funny movies.
Dead Poet Society.
Exactly.
An absolute amazing classic.
I think that's something to consider, being typecasted and going outside your usual realm of...
for sure. But then you get into the waters of trying to change it too much. And here's what I mean by that. Now, I like to cosplay just as much as anybody else.
Ooh, anybody in particular?
So I typically cosplay as Yoruichi Shihoin from Bleach.
Nice.
I'm going to be cosplaying Dorothy from Megaduce or Big O. That's a very old anime. Old anime. But that was kind of your precursor for your mecha animes that came in the mid 2000s.
No, school. No school like old school. I would say the most abstract cosplay I've ever had, or as I've had pieces of other cosplaying, just like put on. It's like I've had Edward Elric's arm. I had Luffy's hat. One cheek had Naruto's whiskers. The other one was Hisoka's, star. I didn't want a tear on my face in New York City because that would have been weird.
So you were a Shonen Jump cover, basically.
Yeah, pretty much. Kind of like, you ever see Ben 10? So you ever see the Ben 10 series where Kevin 11 touches the Omnitrix and he kind of becomes like different parts of the Omnitrix alien?
Yes.
Yeah, kind of like that, but picture that, but with anime characters.
The supposed love child of all these animes, yeah, basically. That works. You get one side that has this and the other side that has that, and
yeah, I got some Mustang gloves. I was walking with a Luffy sandal for one leg, and the other one was a Saitama boot.
Oh gosh, yeah, it's a Shonen Jump cover. That's exactly what that is. All you're missing is are the sandals from the character in Shaman King.
Yeah, pretty sure I had like an Ichigo sword or something.
Oh gosh, the Bankai. But you have where, and it's gotten better, more accepted.
See, speaking of anime, do you think out of context translations could affect a review?
Oh, absolutely.
Like, this is going to sound out of contextly offensive. Like, there's a scene in Dragon Ball Super. First, there's a character called Goku Black.
Mm-hmm.
And,
Yeah.
of course, evil clone trope. Well, technically, not a clone. Alternate universe possessed by an evil deity, but semantics. So, for the sake of simplicity, let's just say evil clone.
Yeah.
Now, he
I,
makes a
I,
bust
I,
out of future Trunks' timeline. He leads a resistance. They all shoot at Goku. And then Trunks says, "Hold your fire, this man isn't black." Of course, context included, they're referring to Goku Black. But because Funimation is Funimation,
yep. Yeah.
obviously that would have affected their reviews of the series.
Well, and I think there's that, but also people's sensitivity. It's like people, there is this thing called sarcasm and satire. They still exist. They still exist. But that does bring up a point. Your translations from Japanese into English, and then trying to make these funny episodes. I feel like they try to make these funny episodes funnier, and it's like, no, sometimes the simplicity is better.
Well,
Sometimes it's
they
just
just
better.
ignore the translation altogether. Like, the most infamous example is Ghost Stories. There's like,
Oh.
all right, look, here's what happened. This series really didn't do well, so if we give it to you, can you try and salvage it? It's like, yeah, this is basically if the kids from South Park solved Scooby-Doo-esque mysteries. They're going to be cursing and swearing a lot. It's like, okay, can you just keep the overall theme of the story, though?
No.
Okay, we'll try to.
No.
No, they do, but they sound more like Eric Cartman and the other South Park kids and less like the Scooby-Doo gang.
Oh.
And keep in mind, this was Monica Rial's earliest performances. Like, the way she says, "Have you accepted Jesus Christ as your Lord and Savior?" is the same way a New Yorker would ask for a breakfast sandwich. "Have you accepted Jesus Christ as your personal Lord and Savior? Can I get a bacon, egg, and cheese plus salt, pepper, ketchup?" It's just all one word. There's no pauses.
Oh, gosh. Oh, the blessings.
It's like shit only 90s stuff could get away with.
Yeah.
I'm not gonna lie, there's a small part of me that misses it.
And you know, and I think that's that nostalgia. That there's just so many factors you can go into. It's like there's an anime, not it's starting to grow. I've been watching it for a long time. It's called Hetalia.
Oh, I love that one. I actually, quick shout out to one of our associates, Freedom, who's doing our songs for the X-Men series, as well as several characters, including but not limited to Marrow, Boom Boom, and Wolfsbane. Just wanted to give a quick shout out there.
Absolutely.
But yeah, are you watching it dub or subbed?
I watch everything sub.
For the record, I don't judge either way. I'm just curious.
Now there are certain animes that I have watched dubbed, like Rurouni Kenshin. I watched it dubbed because that was what was available back in, the 90s. That's what was available 90s / early 2000s. That's all that was available on, Adult Swim.
As an upcoming voice actor,
after 9 o'clock.
I do try to watch both just to keep an open mind. But here's what I've noticed. A lot of the stuff that has more of a Western feel to it definitely sounds better English dubbed. Your Cowboy Bebops, your Full Metal Alchemist Brotherhoods, your
Outlaw Star, I loved dubbed.
Outlaw Star, Trigun.
Yes. I will say that
Just to name those
Now
are just a few
me,
examples.
I'm kind of a um, I'm kind of a stickler, and just as part of one of those factors on like enunciation, like especially so Bleach, and I'm not going to. I know that the actors give their all, and it's a hard job. It really is. From inflection in your voice, trying to hit those parts in the episode that really need a lot of energy. I get it, but I remember the episode that made me stop watching Bleach in dub.
Was it the beach episode?
No, it was not. It was during the Spada arc, when everybody was trying to get in touch with their bankais.
That might have been a filler episode.
It is considered a filler episode, but it does play into, because this was during the time that Grimjo had been taken away as the sixth Espada, and Lupi was the new sixth Espada. And the I hesitate to say this, but the voice actress for Rangiku Matsumoto had said a name, and the thing is that she'd said this name, correct other times. And me being, in high school during this time, I understand that I'm very, very biased. But she had pronounced a character's name wrong. And it was to a degree that I actually had to stop the episode where it was.
Do you remember the
Where I
character?
recorded it. Huh?
Do you remember the character?
I think it was Ikaku, if I'm not mistaken.
Ikaku.
And so she had said the name, and I just remember, like, and again, this is high school me, and I was such a stickler because I was also taking Japanese at the time. And so I was like, how on earth could you say it like this? And I just swore off dub from that moment on. And now being older, I'm just like, and getting into voice acting, I'm just like, you don't know how hard that is. How dare you judge her on that? She could have had an off down.
I mean, keep in mind, this is the same woman that was My Valentine. At least one of the ladies in Naruto, I'm forgetting which. I want to say either. Oh wait, she was Nurse Joy. And she's like,
yeah, what's her name? Michelle.
No, not Michelle Ruff. She.
I'm trying to remember who. I wish I had access to my computer, but we are still unpacking stuff in this new house. So forgive me for being, unprepared.
Oh, it's all good.
But I remember that. I remember that. And there are just certain, and I think there's also some bias on that, because Johnny Young Botch, anything with Johnny Young Botch in it, I will immediately watch.
Well, hey,
because number one, I've met him.
Her name is Megan Hollingshead, by the way.
Megan, okay. I knew it was started with an M. But number one, I've met him. He comes to Yamacon out in Gatlinburg quite a bit. And so I've met him, and he's a wonderful, wonderful guy. And of course, everybody remembers him as a Red Ranger.
Well, it's funny. You could really determine a person's age based on what you know them from. Like my dad, when you mentioned the name John Ratzenberger, someone within our age group, any Pixar movie, whether it's from Toy Story to Monsters Incorporated, Bugs Life, that's where we think of John Ratzenberger from.
Yes.
But if you ask our dads or parents or whoever, they're probably going to say from the TV show he was in. I want to say Cheers.
Yeah.
Yes.
Hmm.
They're probably going to say that.
That's correct.
Or another example, Will Friedle. Some people say, how do you know him? I'll tell you, I know him as either Unstoppable or as Terry McGinnis.
hmm
Or some people say he was the kid from Boy Meets World.
See, I immediately thought Ron Stoppable.
Exactly. It kind of really tells you how old somebody is. Or at least the type of shows or movies they watch. Or when they got into a fandom.
That is correct. Or just when did they remember coming across this actor? Like, what's the immediate first impression that they got,
Right.
or or what performance is it that really hit them?
Right, or
Um,
even characters for that matter. Starscream, ever since the original died, he's had several to take the name, including Stephen Bloom from the Transformers Prime series, Tom Kenny from Transformers Animated, and Charlie Adler from the Michael Bayverse.
mhm.
So it really depends on when you say the name, which actor do you associate the character with?
Absolutely. And I think even then, sometimes, and I think this also goes back into the realm of nostalgia. Because sometimes I think even being a household name, just like you were asking earlier, does being a household name, basically ensure success?
I mean, a lot of
Let's
people
bring
know
up
who
Brandon Fraser.
Aquafina is, but is she
Yeah,
automatically going to make something good?
right. And that goes into, what realm are they going in? But you think of people like Brandon Fraser. He came back, he disappeared. Just disappeared. And he's circulated. People were asking, well, what's he doing? What's he doing? What's he doing? What's he doing? And then he finally comes back and makes the biggest splash in the whale, like, not pun intended. But, he comes back with the fury in his performance in The Whale. And most people hadn't seen him since Tarzan. A lot of people hadn't seen him since The
You mean
Mummy.
George of the Jungle?
Or, sorry, yes, George of the Jungle. Sorry, not Tarzan. But, people hadn't seen him. And there was a lot of speculation that he had, done what, normal people like us, I say that very tentatively because I'm not normal.
And normal's a
But
context, but I get it.
right,
And when you were thinking Brendan Fraser, I was thinking the, Fraser from the show Frasier. I'm like, talking
no,
the Simpsons guy?
no, 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 no,
No,
no,
no, I
no.
know it's like the very talk
Yeah,
guy. Okay, yeah, no,
Brendan.
I got it.
And as successful as he was, for him to just blip off, and then make the comeback that he did after being gone for what,
That
10,
sounds about
20,
right.
10,
Yeah.
20 years?
I
And then
mean,
he comes back and he makes the most beautiful performance.
gotta say, props to him, no pun intended, for actually putting on the weight instead of putting on a fat suit.
Right. And that was a lot. And even with the controversy of that,
I'm trying to figure out what's the controversy. I mean,
something about, I don't even know the full controversy.
Okay, like if some
I,
people are playing superheroes, they obviously need to lose weight to look buff. So if you're trying to play a heavier set guy, you need to pack on a few pounds. Boom, the controversy is over. And this is coming from a heavier set guy.
well, and it goes back to what you said earlier. You are not going to you you're not going, I can't even remember what you said verbatim. It was either you're not gonna, you're not gonna be 100% with somebody, or you're not gonna, you're not gonna
Basically, you're not going to be 100% of the original content. Like, if you read the original Hobbit book and then you see the two adaptations.
Well, when we were speaking of, when we were first speaking about kind of the political correctness of not wanting to offend anybody or not being able to agree to disagree anymore.
Yeah, look, at this
But
point,
you
you
had
can't
said
throw a rock
something.
without offending somebody. Which, I
Yes.
don't want to give too much of a spoiler ahead, is actually going to be the plot of one of the upcoming X-Men episodes. I'll be telling
um,
my co-host about it later, but in the meantime,
but it's there's somebody's going to have an issue with something, and I think you overlook the preparation that an actor has to do because it looks so easy because you don't see the behind the scenes work that they have to do. You just see what's being placed or what they've released.
so you're saying in
So
theory it looks easy, but in
absolutely,
actuality,
there's no telling what they had to go through. And so that's why when you asked earlier, does a household name automatically make a movie good or does it ensure a success?
I mean, it gets the foot in the door, but does it keep your attention? And
I,
it's funny. I try not to quote too much from Dale Gribble because he's kind of like the comic relief of the King of the Hill series. But there is one quote
Dave.
that does resonate with him that he said, just because you have someone's attention doesn't mean you have their respect.
Mm-hmm. That is true, and I think I think that can also apply to where you are in your kind of in your trajectory because going back to that example of Brendan Fraser, he was everywhere and then just gone. That's just like, what was it, about 5 or so years ago? The guy that played in the Prince of Bel Air,
Oh, Will Smith,
or
yeah.
no, not Prince of Bel Air, not Prince of Cosby, the Cosby Show.
Oh,
Oh,
yeah, right.
what was his name? Regardless, they found him working in a Publix. He was a cashier in a Publix. This man that was on a series
This literally
that
sounds like
ran for
Ted.
ages. And I mean, he was, and somebody took a video of him. A customer took a video of him kind of making fun of him that he was working as a cashier in a Publix to provide for his family. This guy that was on the Cosby Show, the one of the at that time one of the a long running series,
Kind of a douchey thing, but okay.
and then he just people saw this video of this guy poking fun at him, and then people casting is contacting him, and now he's back into acting. And so that's why I think when you ask that if the household name automatically means success, I think it depends on whether there's an ebb or is there a flow.
Well, honestly, this is why I'm also welcoming to new names for my for my series and podcast. Plus, I also don't have the money for big names like Mark Hamill. But anyway,
Hey, if he'll work at a Jack in the Box, okay,
Mark Hamill work
he
at a Jack in a Box.
yes, that's actually how he. Did you not know this? So that's actually how he worked on his Joker voice.
That I believe, but
Yeah,
I'm gonna
that
Brian.
that is he did an interview, and he got fired from the Jack in the Box from doing that too much. But that is how he started working on his voices for the Joker, was when he was working at a Jack in the Box.
That's interesting, but wrap your mind around this. Scott McNeil, the voice actor who's done in Beast Wars, he was Silverbolt, Rat Trap, Dinobot, all of his clones, one of the Tri-Predators council members, and my personal favorite, Waspinator. He got his inspiration for Waspinator from a squeaky door, specifically the hinge.
I believe that.
And Andy Serkis, he got his Gollum from his cat.
I believe that. I heard that. Yes. I heard that. I heard that in
It
an
really just
interview.
shows where people get their inspiration for their voices. Benedict Cumberbatch went to a reptile house for Smaug.
Yes.
Bradley Cooper went to a raccoon sanctuary for Rocket Raccoon.
Yes. If I remember correctly, because there was the controversy between Andy Serkis's Jungle Book and then Netflix or Disney released their live action
Well,
Jungle Book.
here's the thing with the Andy Serkis one. Believe it or not, it's actually more correct to the original story than the Disney one was.
Correct. And a lot of them, he used the same, basically the same technology that they used for Lord of the Rings when he was doing it.
That I believe.
And a lot of the actors had to study their characters, like the anatomy, how they moved.
You mean like the animals, right?
Yes, they went through a great deal of research for their characters because that was something that Andy Serkis found important.
Well,
And they found it
the best
important too because
CGI
even the
actor
facial.
of all time. He gave us Gollum, one of the King Kongs, and Caesar from Planet of the Apes.
Correct. And he's I do have to say I fangirl over him a lot because
I mean, he did
he
also
takes
give
that
us Claw
research.
and Black Panther, and the one thing I do like in Black Panther is that the two token white guys are also the two Tolkien white guys.
This is correct. This is correct. The more you know.
Yeah, the
Thank
whole
you for watching.
the whole interrogation scene is basically riddles in the dark.
Yeah. Yeah. Good old Martin. Good old Martin. But there, and that kind of goes in again to what we were speaking about earlier about, technology, the practical versus, and I hesitate to say this, but I sometimes feel like a lot of CGI, the way it's used predominantly, kind of feels like a cop out.
It is.
Let's
look
in terms
at
of like
the
the
original
practicality.
The Hobbit film, the original one, the animated one, the Rankin Bass one. For a 70s film that was not animated by Disney at the time, that was actually done pretty well. Now let's look at the Hobbit film series. First off, it didn't need to be a trilogy. Okay, if you wanted to add traces of the unfinished tales, you could have made it at least a two-parter. Okay, I mean, you get rid of that stupid elf dwarf romance, Lake Town politics, and the obligatory Legolas cameo. Boom, instant two-parter.
Listen, don't hurt my heart like that. I just got over the flu. Don't do that to me.
I'm just saying.
Don't do that to me. I mean, but and again, that's kind of that leeway of creativity that you have to draw to hit a certain vision. I think that's part of it is just.
I'll admit there are certain liberties, but I think we need to ask ourselves, like, how much of a liberty and how much of the original source do we need to stay true? Like, okay, here's a hypothetical example. Batman is still Batman, but the only thing that's changed is that his parents are still alive.
Mm. There's, I don't,
Yeah, it's kind of a key aspect to his character, right?
well, I mean, I don't know because
Or you make a Hobbit adaptation.
what character decisions would he have made? I think that's
Well, that's
interesting
kind of a
in the
butterfly
terms
effect,
of
isn't
what
it?
he
I
could
mean,
play with.
would he still have been Batman? I mean, he still would have been Bruce Wayne, but would he still have been Batman?
Well, that's the question in and of itself. Would that have changed anything? Would it have just delayed something? Would it have gone in a completely different? That's one of those that's one of those questions that you can apply to a lot of series, a lot of fan favorites, because it makes you question how the character development would have happened. Would it have happened the way it did at all? In terms of, how they get, or not even how they get to it, but yeah, how they get to them being a fan favorite.
Of course,
Um,
this does even factor
or
considerations like, say, series that even add characters that are non-canonical. The most famous example is Batman the Animated Series. Harley Quinn was meant to be a one-shot character. Next thing we know, boom, she's in movies. She has her own TV series.
who's in a relationship with Poison Ivy.
Formerly with Joker, now Poison Ivy,
Yeah.
anti-hero, anti-hero.
That is
I mean,
that is an
granted, there are
interesting
other
point.
characters who did it before, like Bebop and Rocksteady from the Teenage Mutant Ninja Turtle franchise, but
Mhm.
she was one of the more famous characters to do so because DC
Well,
is more famous than Turtles.
well, and I think also that comes back to um, how much of a sway do the fans have versus the projected reviews? Because you're always going to have reviews on something.
Well, I think this
But
also.
I think when it comes down to it, is your fans, and people will say, "Oh, well, the true fans."
Well,
I
first
don't
off,
really love.
I get and don't understand that comment. Like, okay, you want to hear something hilarious?
Hmm.
It's no secret that I had to interview a lot of people before finding my ideal cast for the X-Men series. One of the guys, our former editor, wanted to be one of the voices, who considered himself a quote unquote a true Marvel fan. Okay?
Okay.
And I'm like, okay, well, we really need a Toad for this project. And he kind of hesitated for a moment. And I'm like, okay. It's like, okay, so I gave him some lines, but then he gave me the Toad that was more reminiscent of the Mario Toad and less of the X-Men Toad. And I'm like, are you sure you're a Marvel fan? Oh, wait a minute. God damn it, he's an MCU fan.
Damn you! Which is why when people say, "Oh, I'm a true fan," that's why I kind of get, as the young kids like to say this day, the ick.
Yeah, word of advice to anybody out there: if you or somebody you know says you're a true fan, then you're not a true fan.
No, you like, you may like it. Like, I will never ever consider myself the absolute nerd or geek or whatever have you. I just like what I like. I know some things. Some things I had to find by accident. Some things I found because of memes. And then I'm like,
I'm
oh,
sorry,
I didn't
did you
even
say
know
by
it's a
memes or memes?
memes,
Ah,
meme. Um, or talking to people at the comic book store that I go to in Fountain City.
nice.
Like, so I will never, because there's always something. There's always like some hidden gem, some some secret episode or toward some fact that you will not realize until later, and you're like, oh my gosh, how could I not know this?
Well,
Or
it's
you'll
funny
have
where
the ones
life
that'll be like,
leads you.
oh, I knew that, and they didn't.
Well, it is kind of funny where life leads you. Like, before I was doing a podcast, I worked at Wegmans. I kind of I was let go because, long story short, I was kind of getting tired of their shit. They kind of tolerated a lot of slack offness, and I had to pick up the slack of the people that didn't show up.
Mm-hmm.
Teamwork makes the dream work. And I'm like, how is that possible if nobody shows up?
Right? What team?
Anyway, so they let me go. Of course, now the one I used to work at isn't doing as well. But moving on from that, I started the podcast. And from there, I've actually met a lot of people. One of which actually led me to the inspiration for the X-Men series, of which you can catch the origin of the Undateable X-Men series on my YouTube channel.
See, and that goes back into what we spoke about earlier about influence of other creators within their creations.
Right, like it even goes to foreign content. I say foreign, but it might as well be domestic at this point. Like Broly was originally a filler character.
Yep.
But and Toriyama never heard of him at all.
Yep.
But then he's like, "Wait, who's Broly?" It's like, I like this. I want to write him into the story, and he eventually did. And the Broly we got was a lot better than the crying baby that we originally had.
Yeah. Well, and I mean, speaking of Dragon Ball, Dragon Ball was supposed to center on Gohan. It was originally supposed to center on Gohan, and it kept centering on Goku. Yeah,
The
but
original
it
Dragon
ended
Ball
up.
is essentially a parody of Sun Wukong.
Yeah, but in that context, that it was supposed to be about Gohan, and it ended up not centering on Gohan the way it was supposed to. Now, people got on board with it, and it's of course it's a still running series. Dragon Ball is. It's still the one of the longest running series.
I just find it funny that people give Goku shit for being a bad dad, even though he's still training. But they also give Gohan shit for not being a good Saiyan, even though he's a good dad. Although the real question is Goku a bad dad? Because the problem is, you're looking at Goku as a human. When Goku's not human, he's a Saiyan. Saiyans just launch their kid. It's like, yeah, no, good, see ya later, go conquer whatever. But he actually makes some sort of an effort with his kid. Well, kids.
That's such a... Because I never really knew that this was such a big deal for people. I did not know that until recently, and I was like, wow, you all are really giving this a little bit too much thought.
Fair, a lot of anime characters either have missing dads, something... Or
missing parents.
Dead parents.
Yeah, so it's like...
closest we have to a shonen character with a functional family is Ichigo's family, but he just has the one dad.
Well, yeah, because, his mom, Misaki, was killed by Grand Fisher. So, yeah. And then we turned...
That's not saying single parent homes aren't functional. I'm just saying, comparatively speaking.
Right. But it's just, Boruto.
I try not to think about Boruto.
Yeah, we're gonna think about Boruto. I didn't realize, and I haven't really watched a whole lot of that either. I've seen episodes here and there as it comes up or across, my YouTube.
If your series starts off with a good portion of filler, then you're obviously telling me that you're not worth my time.
That was a flag that we feel from, back in the early 2000s. I mean, Inuyasha had a lot of fillers. Inuyasha had quite a bit of
didn't
fillers.
start off with a filler.
That is true.
That's the
That
question.
that is true.
I'm not shaming an anime for having a filler. I mean, granted, fillers exist for authors to catch up, and I respect fillers to some degree for that, and they can
Absolutely.
be good. A lot of times, like beach episodes, they do provide some level of fan service.
Yes.
But if you have to start off with a filler, then clearly you're not heading in the right direction. That is what's wrong with the original Full Metal Alchemist series.
Or with the
they put
Blood
the cart
Brothers.
before the horse in this situation.
Yeah, or like with what was it, Black Blood Brothers?
Or the Hellsing series.
Okay, now hold on. So
Not Hellsing,
are we
Ultimate.
talking? I
No,
was
they
about to
were-
go. Which one?
No, I would have specified. I would have.
Okay. Because the Helsing animation was that felt like a fever dream, especially that end fight. That felt like such a fever dream. But Helsing Ultimate was what I felt like it should have always been. Was not a
It's
fever
more
dream. It
adapted
was
to the
just
manga.
cool. Yes. And so that's why, when you ask about adaptations, it can very much lean one way or the other. But now in this day and age, now it's not even just, a remake of anything. It's like, are they going to make it live action? Which, something like Speed Racer.
It's one of those.
If they made a Speed Racer
Should we?
live action, that is a.
I mean, let's face it. Let's look at One Piece. One Piece is one of the longest running series in anime. But to be fair, its manga is pretty long too.
Yep.
However, Ichiro Oda, the creator, was involved in said series, and that's partially the reason as to why it did well.
Yeah, and a lot and the team making it was very aware of the risks being made, or the risks that had to be taken because of how big the fan base is. That also comes down to the studio, because let's just be honest. We don't want to remember that there was a Dragon Ball live action. We don't want to remember that, but we have to remember that.
Here's an ultimatum for you. All right, for all the listeners out there, I have a challenge for you. Feel free to write down in the comments. Eat a steak, well done, no sauce, no ketchup, no glass of water. You have to eat the entire steak well done, or watch Dragon Ball Evolution in its entirety sober. Watch it. Feel free to write down in the comments.
That's just cruel and unusual punishment. But I mean, we do. But then you look at the Netflix studio that did the Death Note live action.
I will admit, Willem Dafoe was good as Ryuk, but that's its saving grace.
I mean, it
also,
did.
How the hell is he not Joker by now?
I don't know, but you know what? Him being in the John Wick series gave me hope.
I mean, for God's sake, we got freaking Jared Leto.
We don't talk about that. We don't talk about that at all. We don't talk about that.
IMDb does.
Ugh, no. Well, we are not IMDb. Ugh. Not to say that he's not a good, actor, but I liked him better as a lead singer. Yeah, I liked him better as a lead singer. That's what I did. But yeah, I think when it comes down to adaptations, and the responsibility that the different studios, because you did bring up a good point that the One Piece, the people that made the One Piece live action, I think number one, they understood what was happening. I think a lot of these other studios that are starting to dip their hands or dip their feet into making these live actions are under the impression that it will
People
like
automatically, for starters, I don't know why they automatically think live action works. It does, but you gotta find out what it works for. Like, anything that requires a heavy amount of CGI, I personally advise against it. Like, let's look at Gargoyles for a second. It worked for what it was. It was a classic animated series, several ties to Shakespeare, beautifully animated.
absolutely.
Even going as so far to have a banned episode for a while.
Wait, what?
Yeah, it was the episode where
Man,
Broadway.
episode for Gargoyles?
Yeah, well, for a while. It was the episode where Broadway shot Eliza Maza. It's on Disney Plus now, but for a while it was banned.
That sounds stupid. That sounds really
I
stupid.
mean,
But
it was
hey,
about gun violence in the 90s, so.
okay. That's classical. Okay. Okay.
This is the same
That's-
station
that's
that aired
almost like-
Tailspin and Gummy Bears. What do you
That-
think they were going to
that's-
do?
That's almost as silly as this ban that they have in China right now with their video games, where the video games cannot show red as like the blood.
Stop. I know where this is going.
Like that is so silly. That's so silly. I'm
Well, you're
not
wrong,
sorry.
and I do agree with you.
So silly.
How ridiculous that is. I mean, banning does leave a lot of gaps, like the South Park episodes. Like in one of the banned South Park episodes, we do know who Cartman's dad is.
What? Wait, what?
Yep, it was, spoiler alert, Scott Tenorman's dad.
What?
Yep, he killed his dad and fed him to his half brother.
I need to find this episode. 'Cause I would've-
Well, good luck finding it on Max. Oh wait, it's not there.
Where there's a will, there's a way. Where there's a will, there's a way.
Yeah, but basically the whole premise is that the kids called Tom Cruise a fudge packer, and keep in mind he is in a fudge factory packing fudge. So it's not a gay joke; it's a literal joke. But they turned it into a gay joke.
Of course, because I mean, South Park is very good at doing that.
And Tom Cruise grabs every celebrity that South Park has ever made fun of, from Kanye West to Oprah to try and figure out who else they've made fun of.
Do you have time to make the list? 'Cause golly,
I mean,
they have
at least before then.
spared no one, and rightfully so. I think.
Well, to be fair, they made fun of Caesar Milan, but they enjoyed his parody, so he wasn't part of the 200. Oh, Rob Reiner. That was a funny one.
I'm gonna have to go back and rewatch some of these episodes because some of them are lost on me, and some of them I'm like, oh, I remember that.
But the
Or at least I remember.
best weapon they had in their arsenal, though, was Babadari Rashiwa Mikura Papanaru Shazanu. And funny enough, it was actually confirmed by Trey Parker that the first 3 seasons he wished he could get rid of.
Oh, really?
Yeah, I'm like, why? They were fucking hilarious.
Those were. I mean, those are what kind of made it lift off. I'm surprised. Does he think he could do better? Because those were classics. Those are classics.
I mean, Rainforest, Main Forest, Tweak versus Craig, Mecha Barbara Streisand. What was it? Cartman's Anal Probe. Those are all classic episodes.
Cartman's Anal Probe.
I mean, granted, the animation was subpar, but they're.
But I mean, that's what makes it so awesome, though. It's like you can tell, like that was the beginning.
Yeah,
Like,
but come on, if you're watching South Park for the animation, you might as well be watching porn for the plot.
which there's not any. Well, I mean, they're starting to get better now.
Oh please! The whole point is to get your rocks off. After that, I don't care what happens.
You know, yeah, that's the thing, though. Is what are you keeping your attention on? What's the end goal there? You know, is it to see how abysmal the plot is, or
Well,
like
you know,
because
I think the whole concept is like you get your sock or whatever it is you use to relieve yourself, and then afterwards, when you're officially done, even though you weren't presently involved, you take pleasure knowing that you made your existence terrible for some woman involved, and you can't bury that sock deep enough.
no, I mean, you know, until it, you know, crispens
until it starts
up,
getting pregnant.
until it starts crisping up, and you know, you have to throw it out, or else you've got a dangerous weapon on you. If you throw it too hard,
Yeah,
like a dent in the wall.
pocket sock.
Your pockets. Put your hands in the air. What is that? You don't want to know.
It's loaded.
It's loaded and fried and crispy, and
and I will gag you with it if you don't shut up.
it'll get you your calories. Calories.
Yeah, protein packing.
It is protein packing. I mean, you know, you probably have to make it like a tea bag and like steep it in water in order to.
See what you do there.
Thank you. I'll be here all night. But also, I mean, that goes into like adaptations and that such. Also goes into adaptations into video games.
Well, I mean, some things work for better scenarios. Like, let's take half of Adult Swim. Okay?
Mm-hmm.
You watch that shit sober, you're like, the fuck? But then you pack in an edible, then you go,
I think that goes for certain ones. Like, okay, do you remember the cartoon home movies or home videos?
okay, anything past 1 o'clock.
Okay, yeah, now we're going like Space Ghost Coast to Coast. You're just like,
Aqua Teen Hunger Force.
what is this? What is this? What is this?
Exactly, like, you know that god-awful Santa Inc. series?
Oh, very vaguely, yeah.
Yeah, that one with the Seth Rogen and, oh, what the hell, what's her name?
Oh, you brought back a forgotten core memory.
Yeah. Anyway, that god-awful thing.
I have to say, I felt so
bad. I saw
bad.
it twice. I saw it once sober to see if it deserved all the hate it got. Spoiler, it did. And then I saw it stoned, and I'm like, okay, yeah, this is enjoyable.
See, and like some of those, because I'm telling you that the 90s / early 2000s were a whole different monster. Like just a lot of the stuff that we watched during that time felt like a fever dream. An absolute fever dream. And you don't realize that it was a real series until somebody starts talking about it and you're just like, wait, do you remember that? That actually played? Well, yeah. I thought it was a fever dream.
Okay, glad to see it's not just me
Like-
that encounters that.
Like Anamorphosis. Was it that the series that was on Nickelodeon
No,
at
it's
night?
Animorphs.
Animorphs. I thought, like, I don't know why. I remember the books,
Yeah, I think that
but
was
like
Nickelodeon still experimenting with their live action stuff.
that was so weird. I felt like every single time I watched an episode of that and woke up, I felt like I had a fever dream.
Like hell, half of
Like
the kids
every
WB
single time.
lineup is like you just had to be there for between Shaolin Showdown and Jackie Chan Adventures to
Oh
that
my
Ozzy and
gosh.
Drake show.
Those were. Ooh, yeah.
Incidentally, catch my ranking of the 12 Talismans of Shendu episode with Joseph O'Leary.
Oh, I need to watch that. I need to watch that one. I haven't watched that one yet, but we're going to because those are one of those were shows that number
So,
one.
but I think I think time takes place. Well, I think the era in which it's set takes place. Like there are a lot of jokes that kids today wouldn't recognize. Like there's an episode in season 2 where they're in Hollywood trying to find a demon portal for some reason
Mhm.
to let it out because they're forced to. That's the reason why the three goons do anything because they're forced to.
Of course.
It's basically charity work for them. They never get paid.
Fair enough. Fair enough.
Anyway.
Or you know,
But
there's
anyway,
also the
back to
fact
what I'm
that
saying, they're what you call it. He one of the goons says, "I want to visit Clark Gable's old house," and the other one says, "Quite frankly, I don't give a darn." That's a joke that wouldn't not only wouldn't be aired today, but when kids wouldn't understand today.
Mm-hmm. Mm-hmm. I mean, and that's again one of those ones where going back to what you said earlier, depending on what somebody, when you're asking somebody a question or a reference and they tell you what their first answer or reference for you is to let what they were watching during that time or what they remember, immediately.
Or what you call it. But then again, there are some lines that hold up, or that have been used again and again. Like, you ever see the movie Treasure Planet?
Classic.
All right, so there's the scene where the trio flee from the ship with the pirates on it.
Yes.
And Jim asks the doctor, "Is she doing okay?" To which she says, "Damn it, Jim, I'm not a doctor. I mean, I am a doctor, but I'm not the useful kind." Of course, the first line is an homage to Star Trek, but...
Mm-hmm. It's those little gems. It's those little itty bitty tiny gems that really
can make it much more rewarding. But
really seal the deal.
But do cameos, Easter eggs, references make reviews better?
I don't know. I don't know necessarily that they make reviews better, but I will say that they generate a lot of interest and a lot of talk. We're going to go with the most cliche one of the MCU. Everybody waited for those ending scenes. Everybody who was anybody, you could always tell the people, like, especially if you went to the theaters, you could always tell the people who never really watched MCU video or movies because they would leave immediately after the lights came on.
You know what's funny? My dad knew they were there, but he didn't give a shit about them.
Huh?
My dad knew that there were post-credit scenes about them, but he really wasn't invested in Marvel enough to actually give a shit about them.
But that's how you knew, like, especially once you started taking, like, you started looking around, like, trying to figure out, and you would almost feel a little sad for the people that left. for a moment because it's like now you're not even gonna know. You're not even gonna know. You don't even
Yeah,
know.
but some of the ones aren't even worth your
Family.
time. Like one of the
Everybody's waiting
Avengers
for the
one, the
family.
post credit scene was them eating shawarma or something stupid. It's like,
Yeah,
okay, yeah, great. They said they are doing what they said they were gonna do. Ooh.
but there were some, if I'm not mistaken, there were some hints to the next movie, of course.
Yeah, but which
Like,
we knew was gonna happen anyway.
yeah, but
With the
like
internet, so it's kind of moot at this point.
that is correct. But during that time when it came out, people didn't really know what to look for in that moment. And of course, everybody's looking for Stan Lee.
Rest in power.
Everybody was looking for it. And I think also because you're starting to see the technology where people can do holograms or manipulate voice with AI.
Ugh, don't remind me.
And,
But
and then
that
you
is,
start getting into, is it respectful? Would the creator want you to do that?
it is absolutely not respectful. It is insulting. I mean, okay,
Because
let's think of it
Stanley was a
this
part
way.
of everything.
Well, let's
So
think
would
about it
it?
this way. Okay, let's one I for the just for the sake of novelty, take the DNA of Marilyn Monroe, clone her, and then have sex with her. And that's kind of
Ooh,
like that's kind of like the same thing, right?
no, no.
You're exactly. There's no respect for the dead.
I think. Well, if you're ugh. But saying it like that,
Yeah,
like
you're literally violating the dead. Now, if you had previously recordings of them, like that Disney special, that 100 years of Disney did, where they had,
yeah,
yeah, see that I could get behind. They already had those previous recordings of Robin
or they
Williams
had
with Genie. That would
voice.
make sense.
And they had went to his family and asked if that
Yes.
was okay.
Yeah,
But
they
but
didn't
then
just
that
AI that shit.
but then that but then that goes into, of course, Stanley is a staple. Everybody expects him to pull in at least one cameo, if not two. And it's become an expectation at this point.
Here's what I don't get. Now that
So
frickin' Disney owns Fox, why don't they just have Deadpool just looking for Stan Lee? I mean, that would be a great cameo.
that that would be a great tribute. Like having Ryan Williams going like, does
I
something
will.
feel off to you? Does something feel off to you? Am
I'm
I
looking
missing
for
something?
this man.
Like at the end of the movie being like, does something feel off? Have
Something.
we
I mean, eventually after a
there's
while, it'll
something
probably get
something
tiresome. But
and then that just becomes the running joke, like as things keep being made, like at the end, breaking the fourth wall, like being like, you something still doesn't feel right. Does it?
exactly.
Am I the only one? Like I think that would be really cool
But I
of an
think this
idea to
also
do.
takes into consideration of if the show must go on, whether for living or contract based reasons. Robin Williams is a good example of this. We have in the first movie, he killed it as Genie. In the second movie and in the TV series, we had Dan Castellaneta because of issues.
Mhm.
The third movie, they brought back Williams. And then the fourth, and then the live action, they, for reasons
Will
beyond
Smith.
I don't understand, went with Will Smith.
And so my partner and I like to listen to like Disney songs. We love it. And I wanted to listen to Never Had a Friend Like Me. And I immediately he pulled it up on Spotify, and the first note I was like, this is not it. This isn't it. This isn't the right one. And as soon as I heard Will Smith's voice, I was like, turn it off. Turn it off. Bring on the one that I want.
I'll settle for James Monroe Eagleheart,
Do what?
the Broadway version. That's the guy who sings it. But in case you're wondering why that name also sounds familiar, he also does a couple of voices in the Hell of a Boss series, including but not
Oh.
limited to Asmodeus and Vortex.
Yeah, I was about to go. Wait, why do I know that voice? And then you went to Hell of a Boss. I was like, yeah, okay, that's why I know that name. Okay.
Oh yeah, well he was originally the genie from Aladdin,
Hmm.
Broadway Aladdin.
Yes, and but it's still like, and it just goes back to that whole, once an actor has done a character, there is no other option in your head. They embody the character, like The Mask. There have been rumors of another The Mask movie being made. I could not see anybody else but Jim Carrey doing The Mask.
Well, for the TV series, we've had Rob Paulson. He's got a comedical voice.
But like in terms of like face, like in terms of like being on screen.
Oh, okay. In terms of
It's just-
acting, it.
Yeah,
Then I will have to agree with you. Voice.
You could not see past like in the rumors of Constantine 2 being made. You can't see anybody else but Keanu Reeves. That's just like the reviews for The Continental, the TV series that they're making. I cannot remember how much of a review it got, but the fan reaction to it has been kind of subpar.
Well, I mean, let's
Like-
look at
like
12
people-
Angry Men, the original film.
Mm-hmm.
It did really well, but then we got a 90s remake, which kind of felt subpar by comparison.
Because there are just or Boondock Saints. There are just certain, like, reviews are not, and this is why I say sometimes reviews do not matter, is because a actor could save the whole movie. One actor, two actors. I mostly base on soundtracks myself, the OSTs. Because if it has a really good score, like music wise, if it has a beautiful score, I know it's going to be very good. That's just for me.
That's a factor, and you're not wrong.
That's
But you
very
are
much
right.
how.
I'm going to agree with you. There are times in which a film, a production, does have a character in mind. For example, for our series, I was auditioning for Jubilee. Jubilee is essentially the quote-unquote the straight man of the group. I'm using air quotes because I'm not going to get into the PC gender. That's the technical term, but whatever.
Yeah.
Like, you see all these guys do their fucking weeb shit, like forming giant robots, watching anime in the living room,
Mm-hmm.
like, or correcting somebody, saying, "Hey, bring me that kimono. It's actually a yukata."
Yeah.
Like, she'll always just say, "Fucking weeb."
Yeah.
When Mai delivered me that fucking weeb line, that was it. I knew this was our Jubilee.
Yes. And it just,
Like I
just-
was mentioning earlier with the Great Mouse Detective. I would say Disney had 3 spot-on voice acting roles for their movies.
Mhm.
I'd say in order in which the films happened would be Professor Ratigan with Vincent Price,
Mhm.
the Genie and Robin Williams, and Hades and James Woods. Now, a lot of people are going to say that Patrick Warburton nailed it as Krunk, or what you call it, Jeremy Irons did really well as Scar, or Billy Joel was phenomenal as Dodger, or whatever. But
Mhm.
no, Disney really had these people in mind that they were almost difficult to replace. I mean, sure, they replaced them for TV shows and whatever, They didn't do them justice, mind you. They did
Like
to the best of their abilities, but
they weren't it.
no.
Like
It's
there are just characters. There are just people that are it.
It's like
For
a
a
gluten-free
character.
pizza equivalent for somebody who's got a gluten-free allergy.
It's like a what for a gluten-free allergy?
It's like somebody that wants to eat pizza but can't, so they have the gluten-free pizza.
Yes. Like this is it. Now I get to have this thing that I really, really want.
Well, no, I'm more like I was referring to the replacements. Like
Yeah.
in the House of Mouse series, they got Maurice LaMarche to voice Professor Radigan after Vincent Price's passing.
Mm-hmm.
That was really more of the gluten-free pizza situation.
Oh, okay. I follow you now. I'm sorry.
It's all good. My metaphors and analogies tend to go over some people's heads.
That's all right. I'm not ashamed. I'm not ashamed.
Yeah.
I am but a mere mortal.
For now.
For now.
Or even in other media, like say the Transformers the movie. When they were making that film, they had Orson Welles in mind for Unicron.
Okay, now I did not know that. Okay.
As well as Leonard Nimoy for Galvatron.
Okay, now I did know about Leonard. Yes. Rest. Okay. See, some of these things I did not know, and you're telling me about it. And now I'm like, now I got to go research this. Now I got to go
stay informed in pop and geek culture.
I should get back into that. I should get back into and just being instead of being, the observer and being like, ooh, what does this button do?
If you don't push buttons, you don't find out what they are.
Or if you don't flush down fish, then their ghost will come back to you through the toilet and take you back into the great beyond.
Would you like
That's
another crack at that?
Huh?
Do you want another crack at that? Because it seemed like you were struggling there.
What? No. I said what I wanted to say.
All right, because it sounded like you were saying like you don't know what you wanted to say. It sounded like it was much a little longer.
That's exactly how I wanted it.
Okay.
That's exactly how I wanted it because I'm just a baby. I'm just a baby.
I think we should definitely look at all the aspects on what makes a good review. Foreign content, ideal acting, previous incarnations,
Absolutely.
political correctness, unfortunately.
See, and that's just one of the things where it's like being from the era that we are, that didn't play a part at all. And so I really don't.
Well, granted, the Native Americans in Pinocchio didn't exactly shed the most prettiest of pictures.
You're right. You're right about that.
That said, these are just some of the many things we should take into consideration when looking into a review. But ultimately, do reviews matter? They do, and they don't. They do because they help give us an idea and what we're looking for. Ultimately, the decision is ours. And that's the beautiful thing of being in America. And if you're listening to this in America or any other free country, kudos. If not, sorry.
My apologies.
So, Arisa, thank you so much for taking the time out of your busy schedule.
My busy schedule being sick. Absolutely. You're welcome, Tyler.
This has been Geek Talk with Tyler. Stay tuned next week for our 100th episode as we do another controversy episode. Theme songs, instrumental versus lyrical, as I have returning guest, Mr. C. If you like this episode, hit like, subscribe, and follow for more wonderful geeky content. But until then, stay geeky.